صل على محمد وآل محمد. الحمد لله الواحد الأحد الفرد الصمد الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا الأئمة الهادين المهديين. السلام عليك يا صريع الدمعة الساكبة. السلام عليك يا صاحب المصيبة الراتبة. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى أختك العقيلة زينب وعلى أخيك أبي الفضل العباس ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: لقد كان في بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد كان في قصصهم عبرة لأولي الألباب. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
All praise is due to Allah who bestowed upon us all these ni'am, all these great gifts that we cannot count. Allah said in the Holy Quran: وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. When you count the ni'am of Allah, the gifts of Allah, you will never be able to count them. One of the great ni'am is the guidance, is the hidayah, this hidayah. One of the great ni'am is Ashura al-Husayn, this great gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we are able to commemorate the martyrdom of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn and his family and his companions. And I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that his messenger is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent our messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi and revealed the holy book, the Quran, for one main purpose, which is for us to be the representatives of whom? The representatives of Allah. Allah said in Surah Al-Baqarah: Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. When Allah said to the angels, I will place a successor, a vicegerent, a khalifa. A khalifa of whom? A khalifa of Allah. That's what we are. That's who we are. If you look at us in our capacity, in our life, what are we meant to do in this life? It's all encompassed in one notion, that we are a khalifa of Allah. What does that mean? We are representatives of Allah. In the moral capacity, Allah has many creatures, many animals. If you ask biologists, we will say we are just merely mammals. Yeah? So we're just one of the mammals, the great creations of Allah. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, human being, this special privilege, this special position, which is we are representing Allah. In the 60, 70, 50 years that we live, every single minute, remember this, brothers and sisters, every single moment that you live, you are representing Allah. That's your duty. That's the oath that Allah has took upon us before we were created. Yeah? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used many different techniques in Quran for us to be able to realize this position, this important, very important position for us as a human beings. In Quran, you see, Quran starts first by challenging people's thinking. Quran was revealed in Arabia, as we all know. People were worshipping idols, multiple idols. They said these are manifestations of Allah. They did not believe in oneness. They heard about it. The Christians were monotheistic, same as the Jews, and the Arabs used to interact with these people. Yeah, the Jews used to live with them in some parts of Arabia, mainly in Medina, in Yathrib. And they used to interact with the Christians as well. There were few Christians in Arabia when Rasulullah was sent. But the pagans, Arab, they believed in multiple gods. They had 360 odd gods in Kaaba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing, one of the techniques that Allah used in the Quran is to challenge their thinking. That's the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did. Challenge all of their taboos, or everything that they believed in. We take oneness now for granted. We take Tawheed for granted. We take the belief of Allah for granted. We take the belief in the hereafter for granted. For these people, 1400 years ago, these things were alien to them. They cannot comprehend them. They heard, as I said, about the Christians. They don't understand what does that mean. For them, life finishes when they die and that's it. And Quran came and challenged that thinking. Not just that, it challenged every single aspect of their life, of their lives. Every single aspect. Their relationships with their wives, mothers, fathers, neighbors, the relationships with other tribes, the relationships with other nations, with animals, with plants, with the land, everything. Everything Quran came and shook their foundation to the core. That's why they found it, especially the elite at that time, the Qurayshites, Quraysh, they found it problematic for them because they have a system completely established now. And now this Quran came and this Rasulullah came and is shaking that foundation. And shaking that foundation by asking them to think. Always provoking their thinking. Allah said in Quran, وَإِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً قَالُوا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهَا آبَاءَنَا وَاللَّهُ أَمَرَنَا بِهَا. When they do some lewdness, when they do misdeed, they say, this is the religion that we have found our fathers doing it. And Allah has enjoined it upon us to do. So when they were burying their young girls in the age of 3 and 4 and 1 year old and a few months, they said, this came from Allah. This is what we found our fathers doing. And you will see that the second Khalifa provides a narration of how he buried his own daughter. She was 3 years old at the time, and she held his hand. His heart, he said, was shaking while he was burying her. His heart was shaking. It was unnatural for him to do it. But it was the culture of the time, the religion of the time. That's how they think. So this shaking of their foundation, this shaking of their thinking went to the absolute core. The first thing they believed in was their gods. Every tribe had its own god. A small god, they will have an idol, they will have in their home. That would be their own god. A tribe had its own god as well. So you can add to the mix. Every tribe, so there are hundreds of tribes in Arabia at the time. So the family, the tribe, the town, Al-Ta'if has its own god. Mecca had its own god. Medina, and so on and so forth. And you can add. And you'll see each one is believing in whatever they want to believe in. So Quran came and challenged the first absolute foundation of their thinking, of their society, which is their belief in multiple gods. Yeah? Monotheism was firstly introduced to them at that wide scale because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before the Prophet, historians tell us that there were people who believed in the oneness of Allah, the followers of Ibrahim, al-Hunafa, yeah? But there are very, very few of them. The family of Rasulullah were one of them. His grandfather Abdul Muttalib was one of them, but the majority of people, that's what they believed in. And you will see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did this very, very deliberately. It's like a shock and awe type approach, yeah? You go in there first, you shake their foundation, you shake their thinking, they start thinking, and then after that start rebuilding again. Shake the foundation and start rebuilding again. That was a very, very effective method of Quran. It was a problematic method as well for a lot of the people at the time. You know, imagine us now. We have so many things that we are brought up with, right? Religion, they say, as you know, scientists say, it's part of the culture. Culture gets mixed with religion. Things get compounded over thousands of years. That's how we that's how we grow up, believing in certain things, right and wrong. There are some cultures as well, believe in certain things, right and wrong, apart from religion as well. If you come and challenge those things, people will go frenzy, people go crazy. What are you talking about? What do you mean? This is the norm. There's no such thing as a norm. We create that norm ourselves. They said that the nephew of Freud had a book called Simply Propaganda. A very simple book, was published in the 1930s. And in his book, he was the inventor of controlling people's minds. He said, there is no such thing as there is a consensus about something or a belief in something. You can change that with particular tools and techniques, and you can get people in 20 years' time or so to believe in something else if you apply the right methods and the right tools. That's what's happening to us in the world these days. Media is bombarding us every day about certain things. Let's take Islam, for example. We are the evil ones. This Islam is a religion of violence. It was spread by the sword. You will see, you read professors like, what's his name, an American professor, Rufus. He's a very well-known historian. He wrote a book about the 36 events that changed the world. One of them, he said, is the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A professor at that level, a professor at Yale University, and he says Islam was spread simply by the sword. There was no message of peace, nothing like that. A bunch of tribes got together and they started to invade the rest of the world. There was no deep moral change, moral value that Islam and Quran try to introduce. People at that caliber, at that level, when they totally misread history and they tell their audience, their students, that Islam was simply spread by the sword, by violence. All these nations, 1.5 billion people living on earth today, the majority of them are Muslims, or they believe in Islam. Some of them stopped believing, unfortunately, due to some misdeeds by whoever. Will get to them inshallah one day. We'll talk about the new Khawarij of the age and the impact they're having on us on the fourth night inshallah. But the majority of Muslims, 1.5 billion Muslims, we have now all attributed to the rise of Rasulullah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his message. He says, no, all of that is just heritage, nothing really, just spread by sword. Nations adopted Islam because they found it advantageous, and that's it. That's the end of the story. So this that a nation has a belief is just nonsense. Which is why we sometimes, when we ask our Muslim brothers, when we say that Khilafah on earth is something that is appointed by Allah, the successor of Rasulullah is something is appointed by Allah, they say, no, why? There is no need. We have Quran is telling us وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. We can elect a particular person, and that person will be a representative, and that person will uphold the Islamic message. What is the guarantee? What are the guidelines of electing this person? This is very simple questions that we ask here. A Khalifa of Rasulullah is a representative of Allah, as we all are. And that person is supposed to apply Islam, the true and the real Islam. Apply the principles of Quran. Interpret the principles of Quran. How could that person be able and have the capacity to do that? And he's just appointed by people. What if people, like we do now, you go around and you say, oh, brother such and such, brother Amr is a good guy, spread it around people, do some election, right? Election as we call it, especially in our countries, mashallah, we have very fair and transparent elections, yeah? Democracies, mashallah. And you can promote anyone. It's a game. It is a game of brainwashing people and impacting them, impacting the way they're thinking. A pattern, you only apply a pattern and you receive it every day, and then it becomes part of your life. That's what's happening, unfortunately, to the world this day. The pure message is being polluted, the pure message is being covered. Media machines controlled by certain individuals, very few individuals, and that's why you'll see, you wake up in the morning, you read the news, the same narrative, not the event itself. If it was the event itself and how it happened, fair enough, but within the event itself there's a narrative, yeah? You will see it's the same narrative everywhere, the same narrative communicated in every media outlet, everywhere. What does that tell you? Very, very few individuals controlling these media outlets. I wonder if they call each other in the morning and say, what should we talk about today, people? How do we rule the world, people? How do we change people's perceptions and mentalities, people? Yeah? So that was one of the techniques of Quran, which is shake people's thinking and foundation. The other techniques is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the message was revealed to the Meccan pagans, was asking them to think about the world, think about what's around you, think about the creation of Allah. How could you say, a lot of Arabs at the time were atheists, they did not believe in anything, and they believe that they were just born like this, and they will die and nothing will happen. You will see parallels in history now. Atheism is spreading, mashallah. You ask them, how did the world get created? Or a certain point in time, all these physical laws were created or appeared just out of the sudden, just one chance, and then the whole thing, the Big Bang, and then the whole thing just continued, which is fair enough. There are scientific explanation of how it evolved and continued, but how did it happen in the first place? Is there a special power? Is there an entity, a deity? Call it whatever you want to call it. Gaia, a conscious universe. They have different names for it these days, right? You can't say, I believe in Allah. You can't say, I believe in a particular religion. No. We believe that the universe is a conscious universe. Yeah? The universe knows what it's doing. It has these laws, and these laws were selected carefully. If you say, does that mean that there is a special force? Yeah, it's a special force. Nice name. Lovely name. Call it that. Stop there, though. Don't go any further. Don't say Allah, God, or religion, or deity. No, don't go. You're not a progressive person if you believe in Allah and a creation. No. Some people, that Earth is a living being. It's an ancient, I think, Indian religion called Gaia, isn't it? They say it's a living being. It says, Earth has emotions. That's why you have all of those lovely movements, the Greenpeace movements and the rest of them. But they believe that Earth is a living organism, and it has feelings, and we should not hurt the feelings by, plugging plants and so on and so forth, which is fantastic. We need to look after our planet. No one is saying no, but okay. So this Gaia thing, this Earth that is a living being. What does that mean? Is that transcendent? No, it's not transcendent. It's not God. Stop there as well. So you will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking people to think about the universe around them. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Allah says, وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. It's a beautiful ayah, Allah, this ayah. Every time I read it, I reflect with this ayah, because it's everywhere. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ what? يَعْقِلُونَ. Verily, indeed, in the creation of day and night, and the heavens and earth are ayahs, are signs for those who use reason. It's asking them to use their reason, the most important faculty that the human being has, that differentiates us from the rest of the species around Earth. We use reason. And this reason, Quran always tries to tap into this reason, always tries to bring this reason alive, make people think logically. 1 + 1 = 2. We have a world, immaculate world, an immaculate universe. Go and think about how could this great universe have been created without having a creator. Simple things. Unfortunately, you will see that some people try to play with words and just divert people away from the truth. If you bring them back, if you read all these debates between the theists and the atheists, the monotheists and the atheists, if you listen to these debates, if you read the books, you will always see that the monotheists, the theists, always trying to bring you back to the basics, absolute basics. We have a world, we have a great creation, the rules, the magnificent universe that we have, the absolute magnificent universe that we have. Just look up into the sky. Just look up and watch, and you will see Allah just right there. Allah is everywhere. You can see it. عَمِيَتْ عَيْنٌ لَا تَرَاكَ, Ali ibn Abi Talib says. A blind eye is an eye that does not see you. لو كشف لي الغطاء ما ازددت يقينا. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. When if the curtain is removed, that would not increase my yaqeen, my belief in Allah, 1 iota. Because he saw Allah everywhere, in everything that he did. Rasulullah, the historians used to say, there's a tradition that when a rain is outside the home, Rasulullah's face will change. He was engaging with the world. He was reacting to the world. He was not far removed from the world. Unfortunately, we are far removed from the creation of Allah. Our mobiles and tablets and gadgets and everything. We get busy with everything. And this question, by the way, brothers and sisters, about the creation and the magnificence of the world, and it was a question that every human being asked. It was just continued, to provoke people to think throughout our history. Humanity, always, everyone thought about this, and they created different justifications for it. You read the Romans and their mythologies, the god of the sun and the god of happiness and the god of earth, and they fight each other and they get married and they leave a child and so on and so forth. All of these things, yes, they are wrong, we believe, but if you read why people were asking all of these things, is to satisfy that basic desire. Who am I? Where am I going? Why am I here? Why am I living? Every single one of us asks this question. I challenge anyone that could come to me and say, this question did not come to your mind. It's the basic question that we ask. Atheist, monotheist, Muslim, Christian, whatever you call it. You're an engineer, a doctor, a cleaner, or whoever you are, you will ask yourself this question. It will come to you. It might manifest itself in different ways. You might ask yourself in different ways, but it's that same question that you always ask. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ يَقُولُونَ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ. Those who remember Allah, who are sitting, standing and lying on their side, and they reflect on the world. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ. They reflect on the creation of heavens and earth. Oh Allah, you have not created this in vain. You have not created this aimlessly. Those mu'mins, when they reflect on the world, they see a creator. They see a creator that created this world, and they see a reason for creating this world. And then that's why we see the religion, or every religion, by the way, every religion is trying to answer this very basic and simple question. Who am I? What am I going to Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And you will see that Islam is the most unique, is the only religion. If you study if you study comparative religions, you will see Islam has touched and answered every single question that we might ask. And a lot of historians say Islam is dictatorship. It does not allow people to think freely. It touches every aspect of human life. It tries to answer every question. Why? Let people think whatever they want to think. Let people come up with whatever answers they want to come up with. No. Quran says, we give you a framework. We give the framework that you operate within that framework. Right? You can't think freely within the framework. Sayyid Muhammad ibn Sadr rahmatullah alayhi says there is a closed circle. Right? He's a very well-known marja who was assassinated by Saddam Hussein in the 80s in Iraq in 1980. And in one of his books, Al-Usus al-Mantiqiyya lil-Istiqra', the foundations of logical thinking, that's what he calls it. And he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran has created a framework. It's like a circle. Imagine it as a circle. Right? Anything outside the circle is controlled, put foundations for it. Within the circle you can do ijtihad, you can be creative, you can think. It's a big circle if you really think about it. Right? And it's open that ijtihad for ummah to continue with. That's why you will see us, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, we say that ijtihad, which is continually to interpret Quran and continually to try to extract the rulings, the Sharia from the sources, Quran, Sunnah, yes, and Aql. You will see that this is continuing with us. Other schools of thought have stopped. They said, all right, 4 schools, and we stop there. We don't have to go. There's Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, Shafi'i. Yep, we stop there. We don't have to continue. With the school of Ahlul Bayt, this is continuing. That's why you will see the madhab of Ahlul Bayt is able to adapt, mashallah. You throw every question, every new scientific fact, every new achievement that a human being does, you will see that the madhab of Ahlul Bayt is able to react to it, is able to adapt with it. It's because it's not rigid, it's not stopped, it's continuing. Why is that? This is the teaching of Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Bayt continued always to evolve this message. Wallahi, they continued always to adapt whatever is happening around them. Because it's the natural, it's the practical, it's the pragmatic school of thought, the pragmatic religion. And I call it the only religion, the only truthful religion. And by this, we're not saying every other religion is kafir and infidel and they will go to hell like other schools of thought. No, we say there are many different paths to Allah. Many different paths. They all take you eventually there. One of them is a straight path. It's a highway, 4 lanes each way, right? Rest areas on the way where you can stop and rest. It's direct paths. There are some bridges. There are other paths. They take you through the forests and some other roads and through the mountains. You could fall with those other roads. You could fall. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you could eventually get there. But this path, this highway that Ahlul Bayt have created, very straight, very simple. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Some interpreters say الصراط المستقيم is the love of Ahlul Bayt. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So you see that Quran started to get us to think about everything that around us. The creation, the world. If you look at our world, look at Earth. I know I'm narrating very simple things that we all know, but Islam is all about tafkir. فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Remember, for remembrance will benefit the believers. Yeah. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Those who remind each other. That's what we are. We are stating very simple facts, but we want to go back to those very simple facts and reflect on them. Reflect upon them. So you see us here living on Earth, our sun, in our galaxy. How many stars in our galaxy, between 100 to 400 billion stars, just in one simple galaxy. The diameter of our galaxy is 100,000 to 120,000 light years. How fast can light travel? 300,000 kilometers a second, right? Let's do the math. That's just the diameter of our galaxy. How many galaxies there are? Hundreds of billions of galaxies.
Subhanallah.
Subhanallah. Wallahi, when you read, and this day and age, there's discovery and there are documentaries everywhere. Just jump on YouTube, just jump onto those and feel and fly with them. Fly with this creation of Allah. Just see, and these are very simple, very, very simple, numbers that we read. A number, 100 to 120,000 light years. What does that mean? Try to reflect on it. Try to think about it. See this magnificent creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These days, scientists are saying, well, we don't even know if this is the only universe. There are probably multiple universes. There are different theories out there because there are some phenomena in the cosmos that we cannot comprehend. We cannot comprehend. It's so great, it's so magnificent, and then you will see one human being with some 100 trillion cells sitting on a pulpit, sitting on a chair somewhere and says, I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in Allah. What do you mean? That's it. Simply wipe out this entire creation. Wipe out this entire magnificent world. How old is the world? 13.8 billion years. That's how the scientists are thinking. They could estimate the age of the universe, give or take 5% error margin. If you were to put the entire age of the cosmos into a year, our age, human being, is 14 seconds of that. Right? 14 seconds only. That's our entire history. And I'm not talking about written history starting from the Mesopotamians some 8,000 years ago. No. They're talking about when the early humans, as they call them, climbed down from the trees into the savannas of Africa and spread throughout the world. They're talking about a few million years. It's only 14 seconds in the age of this universe. And you come and say, I don't believe in anything. Now imagine this great creation and this great universe. And Allah says, you are my Khalifa. You are my representative on earth. I read once that some scientists say there is definitely a possibility of life outside our planet. Probably some primitive form of life that could live in some severe conditions outside the world. But the question remains, are we the only being that is able to comprehend the world? Are we the only species? Are we the only creation that is able to appreciate the rest of the world? This is what scientists are asking these questions. There could be other forms of life, as I said. But are we the only ones that are able to understand this world? To understand this universe? Are we the only ones that are able to devise these models? Because that's how we achieve, these numbers, 100 to 120,000 years of light years, yada yada yada. How did we do that? We can't see them. Light has traveled from the source of the universe 13.8 billion years ago. That's how, it's all mathematical calculations. We are the only, they think, we are the only creation that is able to comprehend the world. Very consistent with the message of Allah, that we are the only Khalifa on this world. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Now, the third technique I want to talk about, which is more relevant for our night tonight, is the technique of stories in Quran. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةً لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. There was certainly in their stories lessons for those of understanding. And you'll see that stories in Quran have a very important are very relevant and take a very important role. Quran talks about different stories of different prophets. Yes, we have the story of Prophet Isa and Prophet Musa and Prophet Adam and Zechariah, and there are 25 prophets were mentioned. The traditions say there were 125,000 prophets that were sent to mankind. 25 of them were mentioned in the Quran, and with each one of them there is a story, right? We tend to reflect the stories very, very nicely. We love some of those stories. The story of Nabiullah Yusuf, the youth would love this story. A beautiful woman calls upon the Prophet. The Prophet says no to that beautiful woman who's a princess of her time. Very, very interesting story. Fortunately, we don't reflect as much with other stories that you of other prophets. But that's what Quran used. These stories. Now, are these stories concocted stories? No, they are historical events, right? But Quran used them, put them in a nice story for us to understand. Why? It's easier for us to reflect with that story. It has individual personnel. It has some heroes that people can relate to, can reflect with those individual and those personalities. We tend to love the concept of heroes. You'll see comic books going everywhere these days. Hellboy and Batman and Superman, and right. We like those heroic people. We tend to relate to them quite a lot. Why do we relate to stories as well? Because we can understand them. If you give me an abstract idea, I don't tend to relate to it as much as I relate to a story. Whereas when you give me a story about someone, I tend to relate to it a lot more. And you will see Quran use story to touch every important belief or concept. You have the story of Lut, even talking about homosexuality, for example, a very controversial and issue, especially for the Arabs when Quran was revealed. I mean, the issue of homosexuality at that time was a bit touchy, at that time, and they did not talk about it. Quran came and he said, here you go, the entire concept of homosexuality and relationship between same-gender people put to you in a very, very lovely, nice story that you can relate to and you can understand. You will see the story, as I mentioned, of Yusuf, of how a little child who was thrown into a well and then taken after, and then by the will of Allah, this little child became the minister in the Egyptian government at that time. So we all relate to these stories, which brings me to why we are sitting here today. We are relating and commemorating the story of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And you will see in the story of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, there are heroes, there are characteristics, and Abi Abdullah al-Hussein has orchestrated this epic very, very, very careful in every aspect. Have you lost a brother? Have you lost a son? Do you have friends? Do you have companions? Are you alone? Do you have a message? Do you believe in reform? Do you believe in human change? Right? Everything, every principle that touches human life, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein has very magnificently architected his epic on the 10th of Muharram. And he started his epic, by the way, from the day that Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan la'natullahi alayhi died all the way to the 10th of Muharram. And inshallah, in those 10 days, we will go through the story. We'll go through the story of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. We'll touch on some of its heroes. We'll touch on some of its the concepts. We'll touch on the aspects. We'll touch on why Imam Hussein had risen. What was the achievement? What impact did it have on human history, not just Muslim history, on human history? What role did women play? What role did companions of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein play? What role did children play? What role did the society play? All of that stuff, inshallah, we will touch on throughout those 10 nights, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, gives us the tawfiq, the guidance. But I want to start. I want to finish this majlis today by focusing on why we established those majalis. Now, this majlis that you are sitting in, brothers and sisters, has a historical significance. This was not established some 200-300 years ago. No. This is a very, very old phenomenon. All right. The majlis of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein started very old. It started with A'immat Ahl al-Bayt. We'll inshallah touch on this very briefly, very quickly tonight. And it continued until this time. But why do we do these majalis? What are the advantages of doing these majalis? I want to touch on very few advantages. Inshallah, it will entice and encourage my brothers here and my sisters to continue to come to this place and continue to share with me this great night and this great epic and story of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. But very, very, very few. I mean, if you try to put down the benefits of majalis of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, wallahi, I tell you, it's infinite, because you can't count them. There are so many of them, touching every aspect of our life. But let's just touch on very few of them. First thing is, we get to know Quran a bit more. You'll see most of the majalis throughout the Shia history always start with a small, very quick narration of the Quran. And you will see that the reciter, the zakir, will try to interpret that ayah and share with people the different interpretations. So that's why you'll see the followers of Ahlul Bayt, especially those who continue to attend majalis, they have some awareness of Quran and some awareness of the explanations and why some ayahs were revealed and so on and so forth. Secondly, it creates an environment for us to practice very freely, especially for us here in the West. We go outside and it's a challenge for a lot of us, the mu'min. It's a constant challenge. The way we eat, the way we dress, the way we talk, especially for our sisters, with them wearing their hijab. We cannot very, very freely share with people our beliefs. Sometimes we have to compromise at work and hide things and pray in private and so on and so forth. Whereas here, we can be ourselves. We can just come here and be ourselves. Practice what we believe in very freely, very openly, share with each other. The Ahlul Bayt created this to create harmony amongst us. That's why you'll see us from different cultural backgrounds, Arabs and Afghanis and Pakistanis and Indians and mashallah, different ages, different levels of education and so on and so forth, all coming under the banner of Abi Abdullah Hussein, under the name of Hussein, and sharing these great nights. These nights, as some historians put it, he was a poet, but he said it's a night. Yes, there are 10 nights of sadness and mourning, but there are 10 nights of celebrations. We celebrate us being followers of Abi Abdullah Hussein, followers of this great message of Abi Abdullah Hussein. Wallahi, I tell you, if it wasn't for the message of Abi Abdullah Hussein, this Islam, ala al-Islam is-salam. If it wasn't for that message, what Islam? The Islam of the rulers, the Islam of Muawiyah and Yazid and the rest of them. What sort of Islam is this? This is a beautiful Islam. This is a lovely Islam that when you wanted to talk about logic, it's very magnificently talks about logic and puts the framework for thinking logically. If you wanted to talk about defending, yes, that's what we do. We defend ourselves when we are in need for defending ourselves. All of this continued, by the way, because of these majalis. These majalis are one of the reasons why we continue to do what we do. So that's why we need to support these majalis, brothers and sisters. This Husseiniya is one example. And every center in Australia, every center in Canberra, every center all around the world, these need to be supported. Because in here we can be ourselves. In here we can talk freely about our religion. In here we can talk freely about the message of Ahlul Bayt salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim. If you look back in history, Shia went through some calamities. We'll talk about them inshallah in the next 10, 13 nights. There were some times in history where we could not call ourselves Hassan and Hussein. We call ourselves Umar and Abu Bakr. Seriously, go and read the history of Shia. Inshallah, on the 6th lecture, we will talk about the history of Shia. The history of Shiism. Who are we? Our ancestors. How did we come here? How did we end up here? How did those 300, 400 odd million Shias continue to exist today, despite all of what happened in history? So at that time, we could not even call ourselves Hassan and Hussein, called ourselves Umar and Abu Bakr. But they used to come to their own majalis, and they used to be able to call themselves Hassan and Hussein, and they used to be able to cry about Abi Abdullah, and reflect on the message of Abi Abdullah, and reflect on the message of Ahlul Bayt salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim. One of the advantages of this majalis, brothers and sisters, is that it creates an environment for our children as well. It creates that bonding between us and Ahlul Bayt. Because if you do not create an environment, some people say, oh, I sit at home and I put the radio on or put some recording on and I listen to some lecture about Abi Abdullah. That's great, that's fantastic. But you need to live in an environment that reminds you of Abi Abdullah Hussein. You need to come to this Husseiniyya, brothers and sisters. That's what I do. I come here and I reflect 1400 years ago. And I say, my ancestors did this. And because they did this, we continue to exist. And if we continue to do this, and we continue to come to this majlis, to this Husseiniyya, to this center, we will inshallah continue to exist as well. In this country or any other country. Don't listen to people who come to you and say, oh, we are in the West now. Our children and their grandchildren will be westernized. They will be lost. No. If you read history, that you will see Islam was spread because of this sort of migration. Muslims, especially the followers of Ahlul Bayt, by the way, brothers and sisters, the entire southern part of the Philippines, right? The southern part of the Philippines. Islam is spread there because of the Hashemites and the Alawites. Flooding persecution, they went there and they started Islam over there. They started Shiism over there as well. Obviously, over history, it changed, and then the religion or the school of thought of the majority prevailed. But nonetheless, if you look at the subcontinent as well, you will see that the followers of Ahlul Bayt continued and spread the message over there. If you look back to history, you will see Qum that was established now. Ahlul Bayt sent their companions over there. Specifically, narrations say that Ahlul Bayt sent their companions to Qum specifically, and from there it continued. This beautiful message of Ahlul Bayt continued to spread throughout the entire east of the world, all the way to the subcontinent, all the way to Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and the rest of them. Brothers and sisters, when we continue to come to these majalis, wallahi, I am not trying to exaggerate. I am just reading history and reflecting back. I love history. I love those stories. This is what these stories of Ahlul Bayt, the stories of our prophets are trying to communicate to us, right? When I reflect back, and I see that this is what my ancestors have done, and this is what I have to continue to do. If you come here and you don't understand English, that's fine. Continue to come for a symbolic reason. Takthir al-sawad, as historians say. You increase the sawad, you increase the crowd. Even if you don't understand what the zakir is saying. It might be Urdu, might be Persian, regardless of what it is. Is it a center of Ahlul Bayt? Yes, it is. Continue to come. Continue to support it. Because if it continues to exist, we will continue to exist. The message of Ahlul Bayt continues to exist. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So you will see, brothers and sisters, that these majalis, as I mentioned, are not something new. Now historians say that the verse, and this is a Sunni historians, if you go and you read in the history books about the narrations, the traditions from Rasulullah about the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, you will see that there are different traditions from different sources which adds to the authenticity, as I mentioned in a different majlis, to the authenticity of the hadith. We will inshallah talk about in those 10 nights. We will reiterate that just to remind ourselves about what are the hadiths and the sources of hadith and so on and so forth. But if you read in the history books, Sunni history books about the different traditions about the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, that you will see the first majlis, similar to this majlis. The first majlis about Abi Abdullah al-Hussein was established during Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sallu ala Muhammad. So in Al-Khawarizmi, he's a very well-known Sunni historian. In his maqtal about Imam al-Hussein, remember Imam al-Hussein is not a Shia figure. The people who wrote about the maqtal of Imam al-Hussein, some of them were Sunnis, by the way. That's how the entire Muslim Ummah loved Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. And that's why we need to be careful how we practice our majalis, because people look at us and they want to understand who is this Hussein. And sometimes the message gets distracted with some practices, unfortunately. And the entire focus becomes about some practice. And the message, this beautiful message of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, gets forgotten. When
Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So you will see that when we read history, we'll see that the first person that established the majlis of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu wa sallam alayhi. Al-Khawarizmi, in his book Maqtal al-Khawarizmi, mentions that in an authentic tradition, that when Rasulullah when Imam Hussein was a year old, 12 angels, muhmaratun wujuhuhum, they had red faces, muntashiratun ajnihatahum, they had their wings spread. They came to Rasulullah sallallahu wa sallam alayhi. This is one narration, and inshallah the other night, I think it's the third or the second night, I'll talk about the other narration, the narration from Bint Jahsh as well. It's a very interesting narration, but we will go with this narration today. When Imam Hussein was 1 year old, those angels came to Rasulullah and they told him what is going to happen to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. And they said to him, he will have the reward of Habil, and his killer will have the wrath and the damnation of Abil. And then Rasulullah sallallahu wa sallam alayhi, when they came to him, and it said, the narration said, every angel came to Rasulullah and gave him their condolences. And then Rasulullah said, Allahumma khudul man khadalah, waqtul man qatalah, wa la tuhannuhu fi ma talab. Oh Allah, kill whoever has killed my son. Oh Allah, destroy whoever has destroyed my son. Oh Allah, do not let them enjoy the reward for killing my son Al-Hussein. The same tradition says when Imam Hussein was 2 years old, Rasulullah was in a trip. He was outside in a trip, and he stood in some caravan stop. And istarja, he said, oh, we are all to Allah. We all return to Allah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are all from Allah, and to Allah we shall return. They asked him, why would you say that, Rasulullah? Why would you say that, oh Rasulullah? He said, Jibreel just came to me. And he said, your son Al-Hussein ibn Ali will be slain, will be killed on the river in the Euphrates, in a town called Karbala. This is what the tradition say. In a town called Karbala. His killer will be called Yazid. He's the most damned person on earth in the race of human being. And then the tradition says, Rasulullah says, whoever sees the son of my son Al-Hussein, من رأى رأس ولدي الحسين وفرح لما حل به, and he enjoyed what he has seen, لم يستمع إلا خالف الله ما بين قلبه ولسانه, i.e. when he recites shahada, on his tongue in his mouth, it does not reach his heart, i.e. he's not a Muslim. Islam does not get into his heart. He's an infidel. And then the tradition says, when Rasulullah came to Medina, he mounted the pulpit. He started to give his sermon, and he had Imam al-Hussein and Imam al-Hassan. And at the end of it, he put his hand on the head of Imam al-Hussein salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, and he said, "O Allah, ana abduka wa ibnu abdik, wa hadani ata'i bi'itrati wa khiyar dhurriyati." O Allah, I am your slave and I'm your messenger. And these two, about Imam al-Hassan and al-Hussein, are my successors and the best of my children. Allahumma waqad akhbarani Jibreel anna waladi hadha maqtulun makhdul. Oh Allah, Jibreel has told me that this son, my son Al-Hussein, will be killed and betrayed. Oh Allah, fabarik li fi qatli. Oh Allah, reward me. Rasulullah says to Allah, reward me for the shahada of Imam al-Hussein. Does Rasulullah need more reward? That just tells you what sort of reward Rasulullah will be getting, what sort of sacrifice Rasulullah has given to us, right? By sacrificing his son, Imam al-Hussein salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. وَاجْعَلْهُ مِنْ سَادَاتِ الشُّهَدَاءِ, and make him the master of shuhada. That's why we call al-Hussein Sayyid al-Shuhada and not Hamza. The traditions from Rasulullah asked us to call Imam al-Hussein Sayyid al-Shuhada. In a narration from Imam Zayn al-Abidin, said, أَيْمَا مُؤْمِنٍ ذَرَفَتْ عَيْنَاهُ عَلَى أَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. Whoever starts crying, whoever cries for the sake of Abi Abdullah, and وَعُيُونُ وَدُمُوعُهُ تَسِيلُ عَلَى خَدِّهِ إِلَّا آجَرَهُ اللَّهُ بِهَا عِزًّا فِي الْجَنَّةِ يَسْكُنُهَا أَحْقَابًا. This narration is from the book of Al-Luhuf في قتل الطفوف. And Imam says, whoever cries for Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, and his tears will start to pour into his cheeks, Allah will reward him Maskanan fil Jannah, Izzan fil Jannah, a place in Jannah, will live in it for ahqaba as in millennia, a very, very long time. And in another tradition for Imam Ali ibn Hussein salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, he says, Majtama rahimallahu abdan, rahimallahu abdan ijtama'a ma'a akharin fatadhakara fi amrina, فإن ثالثهما ملك يستغفر له. May Allah bless a abd who sits with another abd. MashaAllah, all of us are sitting here today remembering the musibah of Abi Abdullah. رحم الله عبدا جلس مع عبد فتذاكر في أمرنا إلا كان ثالثهما, the third of which will be an angel that will continue to ask forgiveness for them. So, brothers and sisters, historians tell us that the first person that established the musibah of Abi Abdullah was Rasulullah sallallahu wa sallam alayhi. Now the other one that established it in its form now was Imam Ali ibn Hussein sallallahu wa sallam alayhi. When he came back from Karbala, he started a tent outside of Medina when all the Muslims came to pay their condolences to Imam sallallahu wa sallam alayhi, Zayn al-Abidin. And then Muhammad ibn Hanafiya came to Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and he could not just believe what he has heard about what had happened to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. He was dragging himself, he was sick, he was ill. He mounted on one camel, he fell from it. He mounted the other camel, he fell from it. He kept dragging himself to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. And he said, فَعَلَتْهَا وَاللَّهُ بَنِي أُمَيَّةَ. Oh Allah, by God, Bani Umayyah has done it. And you will see that this majalis about Abi Abdullah al-Hussein continued throughout our history. And then one of the other establishers was Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. He was sitting there, and Di'bil al-Khuza'i was reciting a poem for Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. It's a very well-known, very famous poem where Di'bil starts with Manazilu ayatin khalat min tilawatin. Wallah, this poem really affects me every time I read it. وَمَهْبِطُ وَحْيٍ مُقْفِرُ الْعَثَرَاتِ. A places of ayahs, a places where ayahs were revealed, is now completely and totally empty. And the place where Jibreel comes is now no one is in that place, because when Ahlul Bayt came to Medina after the calamity of Karbala, the houses were empty, brothers and sisters. No one was there. Ahlul Bayt weren't there. They were all of their children, all of their sons were slain on the day of Karbala. And Imam Rida said to him, O the Ibil, take me with you to Karbala. O the Ibil, take me with you to Karbala very quickly. And the Ibil starts, أَفَاطِمُ لَوْ خِلْتِ الْحُسَيْنَ مُجَدَّلًا وَقَدْ مَاتَ عَطْشَانًا بِشَطِّ فُرَاتِي. O Fatim, had you seen Al-Hussein slain in Karbala, and every part of his body has been hit by a sword or a spear. And you will see that these majalis continue throughout history, brothers. All of our imams established these majalis. And the narrations say that Al-Imam Al-Hujjah salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi will continue with these majalis. And the poet says, تبكيك عيني لا لأجل مثوبة لكنما عيني لأجلك باكية تبتل منكم كربلاء بدم ولا تبتل مني بالدموع الجارية. Oh Hussein, you, the land of Karbala has been wet by your blood, and I will not shed some tears about you, O Aba Abdullah. O Aba Abdullah, the poet says, O Aba Abdullah, تبكيك عيني لا لأجل مثوبة. O Aba Abdullah, I cry not for the sake of reward, not just for the sake of reward, لكنما عيني لأجلك باكية. But my eyes shed tears just because of what had happened to you. When I read the story of Abu Abdullah about what had happened to you, it's a catastrophe. It's wallahi a human catastrophe. And you will see how we are Shias throughout our history. We continue to have this relationship with Abi Abdullah. Throughout our majalis, brothers and sisters, for 1400 years, we continue to sit here and cry about Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. We continue to cry about what happened about Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. We continue to pay allegiance to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. And what a story is it about Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. What a story when you read about it. Oh, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, what a story. Why wouldn't I cry for you? Why wouldn't I cry for you? And you have sacrificed your life for me. You sacrificed your life so I can have a good night's sleep. You Allah, brothers and sisters. Imam Hussein did all of this so that this religion can continue, and so that we can continue on this path. Historians tell us, brothers and sisters, that when Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah came to Al-Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he was dragging himself and he said to him, Oh, Ali ibn al-Hussein, I could not believe the story when they told me. I could not believe it. I could not believe that this could have happened. You know, Muslims believed in the stature of Imam Abi Abdullah Hussein. No one could believe that Karbala could occur. But brothers and sisters, Karbala had occurred. Karbala had occurred 1400 years ago. And Karbala continues to occur every day, brothers and sisters. It happens in Iraq every day. It's happening in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. Hussein is being killed every day, brothers and sisters. And that's why we are here. We are here to commemorate our Ashura that is happening every night, brothers and sisters.
إنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون.
One very quick dua, brothers, before we wrap up the majlis.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. Oh Allah, we ask you by these great nights, we ask you by the martyrdom of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, oh Allah, make us the true believers of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, the true followers of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. Oh Allah, grant us the privilege to be the true companions of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. Allahumma اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك غافر الخطيئات إنك على كل شيء قدير برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل يا رب على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Brothers and sisters, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha for our martyrs throughout the Shia world, throughout the Islamic world, preceded by the loudest of salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.